The Virgin pushed him away until the billionaire wiped her tears and whispered, "I'll be gentle." "Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The rain drummed softly against the tall windows of the penthouse suite, tracing rivers down the glass that looked out over a sleepless Manhattan. Amelia stood there, her reflection trembling in the glass, clutching a folder so tightly her knuckles turned white. Inside was the contract that could save her mother's life or sell her own freedom. Behind her, a man's voice cut through the silence, low, calm, dangerous in its certainty. "All I need," he said, "is your signature." Ethan Caldwell didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Billionaire, heir to Caldwell Industries, the kind of man whose presence filled a room before he spoke. Amelia swallowed hard. She'd met him just once at the hospital board meeting where she begged for an extension on her mother's treatment bill. He'd watched her crumble, then made his offer. "Marry me. Just for 6 months. Call it a contract." She'd laughed at first, thought it was a cruel joke. But now, with her mother's condition worsening and debt collectors circling like vultures, she was here. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. He looked at her for a long moment. "Because you don't pretend," he said simply. "You remind me what honesty sounds like." She wanted to hate him for it, for making her feel seen when she only wanted to disappear. The storm outside flashed white across his face, carving the sharp lines of a man used to control, not compassion. "And what happens when the contract ends?" she asked. "Then we walk away," he said. "No strings, no expectations." She almost laughed at that, because people like him never walked away empty. Her pen hovered above the line, her heart pounding like thunder. One signature, one mistake, one miracle. "I'll do it," she breathed. His gaze flickered, the faintest shadow of something unspoken. Then he nodded. "Good," he said, sliding the ring box toward her. Inside, the diamond looked like a trap disguised as a promise. She slipped it on anyway, the metal cold against her skin. Outside, lightning illuminated the skyline, and for a heartbeat, she saw herself reflected beside him, two strangers bound by paper, about to rewrite each other's lives forever. The deal was done, but neither of them knew that before the ink dried, love was already rewriting the fine print. The morning after the contract was signed, the world felt different. Amelia woke up in a suite she could never have imagined calling her own. The bed was so wide it could fit her entire apartment back home, and yet she felt smaller than ever. Sunlight spilled through the sheer curtains, catching the sparkle of the diamond ring on her hand. It did not feel like jewelry, it felt like a weight. She sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the pendant around her neck, the only thing she owned that had not come from him. Downstairs, the penthouse was quiet, except for the soft hum of the espresso machine. Ethan stood by the window, already dressed in a tailored gray suit, the morning skyline reflecting off his cufflinks. "Good morning, Mrs. Caldwell," he said, his tone neutral, as if the words were part of a business meeting. Amelia froze at the sound of it. "You do not have to call me that," she murmured. "I am not." "You are," he interrupted softly, handing her a cup of coffee. "At least on paper." She took it with trembling hands, avoiding his gaze. "What happens now?" He looked out at the skyline. "Now, we make people believe it. The charity gala is tonight. You will be on my arm." The idea of being paraded in front of strangers made her stomach tighten, but she nodded. "All right," she said. "If this is what I signed up for." His eyes flickered to her, something unreadable passing through them. "It is not as cold as it looks, Amelia. Try to survive the cameras." By evening, the penthouse had turned into a whirlwind of stylists, tailors, and assistants. Amelia stood before the mirror as a makeup artist brushed shimmer onto her eyelids. The woman pinned up her hair and zipped her into a sleek black gown that flowed like water. When she turned, she almost did not recognize the girl in the reflection. Ethan entered without knocking, stopping mid-step. For a rare moment, the controlled composure on his face faltered. "You look?" He paused, searching for a word that was not too intimate, not too dangerous. Appropriate, he finally said. She gave a faint smile. I will try not to embarrass the company. His lips curved. You will do fine. At the gala, chandeliers glittered like falling stars. Every guest seemed to carry a name that owned half the city. Ethan moved through the crowd effortlessly, his hand at the small of her back, guiding her with a calm authority that both reassured and unsettled her. The whispers began almost immediately. Is that her? The new wife? She looks ordinary. Amelia heard them all, each one like a tiny cut. She lifted her chin higher, remembering her mother's voice. Dignity is not bought, it is kept. When an older board member sneered, Caldwell, you have gone from mergers to charity cases. Ethan tensed beside her. But before he could reply, Amelia stepped forward with a steady smile. Charity is not a downgrade, sir, she said softly. It is an investment in something that lasts longer than profit. The man blinked, thrown off balance. Laughter rippled nearby. Ethan's eyes met hers surprised, maybe even impressed. Hours later, when the last toast was made and the music slowed, Amelia slipped outside onto the terrace for air. The city glittered below, endless and cold. She thought she was alone until she heard footsteps. Ethan joined her, his tie loosened, his voice quieter than she had ever heard it. You handled yourself well, he said. She looked at him, the skyline reflected in her eyes. I was not raised to break under pressure. No, he said. You were raised to fight. There was something in his tone that made her chest ache, a strange warmth behind the armor. For a heartbeat, they stood in silence, two people bound by paper and pride. Then, as thunder rolled faintly in the distance, Ethan reached out without thinking and brushed a stray tear from her cheek. His hand lingered, gentle, uncertain. You do not have to be brave all the time, he murmured. Amelia's breath caught. The stormlights flickered across the glass, and for one suspended moment, the air between them was not about contracts or pretense. It was something human, fragile, real. She stepped back quickly, heart racing. Good night, Mr. Caldwell. His hand dropped, and a faint smile touched his lips. Good night, Amelia. As she walked away, the ring on her finger caught the city light, a reminder that every story built on a contract has a line where business ends and something far more dangerous begins. Days turned into weeks, and what began as a business arrangement slowly twisted into something neither of them had planned for. Every morning, Amelia woke to the quiet hum of the penthouse and the faint scent of coffee already brewing. Ethan was always there, reading the paper, his jacket perfectly pressed, his presence steady and unreadable. They spoke little at first, polite exchanges over breakfast that felt rehearsed, like two actors stuck in the same scene. But one morning, as she reached for the sugar, her hand brushed his, and the world seemed to pause. He looked up, eyes meeting hers over the porcelain cup, and something unspoken lingered between them before he cleared his throat and turned away. She told herself it meant nothing, that she could not afford to feel anything. The contract had rules, no intimacy, no real emotions, and Amelia kept those lines carved deep in her mind. Yet, as the days passed, those lines blurred. She saw him not just as the billionaire with a signature that ruled lives, but as a man who worked late into the night, who carried exhaustion in his eyes even when his suit was perfect. Sometimes, she caught him standing by the window, long after midnight, staring at the city lights as if they were ghosts of something he had lost. Once, curiosity overcame her, and she asked softly, "Do you ever get tired of pretending that you have it all?" He looked at her, startled, then smiled faintly. "Every day," he said. It was the first truth she had heard from him, and it changed something inside her. Later that week, he invited her to join him at a company dinner, a smaller event, more intimate. She hesitated but agreed. When they arrived, she noticed how his employees watched them, whispering, their gazes darting like sparks. During dinner, a young executive made a cruel joke about contract brides, and laughter rippled across the table. Ethan's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, Amelia set down her fork and said calmly, "A contract may start something, but character decides how it ends." The table went silent. Ethan looked at her with quiet admiration that he tried to hide behind his wine glass. That night, in the car ride home, neither spoke for a while. The city glowed around them, reflections sliding over the tinted windows. Finally, he said, "You did not have to defend me." She looked out the window. "I did not. I defended myself." He turned toward her, a small smile forming. You are full of surprises. You just do not know where to look, she replied. He laughed softly, the sound low and genuine, the first real laugh she had heard from him. When they reached the penthouse, rain began to fall again, soft against the glass. She walked to the balcony, breathing in the scent of wet pavement and distant thunder. Ethan joined her, their shoulders almost touching. You hate storms, he said quietly. How do you know? She asked. You flinch at lightning, he replied. You did at the gala too. She looked at him, surprised that he had noticed. My mother used to say thunder was just heaven rearranging furniture, she murmured, half smiling. He chuckled, then turned serious. You miss her. Every day, she admitted. She would have told me not to do this marriage. She would have said I was selling myself short. And yet you did it, he said. For her. For survival, she corrected. There is a difference. Ethan's gaze softened. Maybe not as much as you think. For a long moment, the only sound was rain tapping on the railing. Then lightning flashed, illuminating their faces, close enough for her to see the reflection of herself in his eyes. She stepped back slightly, flustered. Good night, Ethan, she whispered. He hesitated before answering, Good night, Amelia. As she turned to leave, his voice followed her, low and rough. You do not have to keep your walls so high. She paused but did not turn around. Neither do you. The door clicked shut behind her, but the echo of their words lingered in the silence, like the calm before a storm neither of them could avoid. The following days carried a strange quiet between them. Something had shifted after that night on the balcony, an invisible current they both felt but neither dared to name. Amelia began to notice the smallest things, the way Ethan loosened his tie the moment he stepped through the door, how he always left the last cup of coffee for her in the mornings, how he listened without interrupting when she spoke. It was disarming and terrifying. One evening, she found him asleep on the couch, laptop still open, documents scattered across the table. For a long moment, she just watched him. Without the armor of his suits and precision, he looked almost human. She gently set a blanket over him, but when she turned to leave, his voice stirred her. You are still awake, he murmured. She froze. You should rest, she said softly. You have been working too much. His eyes opened slowly, finding hers in the dim light. You are starting to sound like a wife, he said, his tone halfway between teasing and truth. Her breath caught. I am just being polite. Polite is not the same as caring, he whispered. Their eyes held, and the silence stretched thin. Then, suddenly aware of her heartbeat, she turned away. Good night, Ethan. But she did not sleep easily that night. The next morning, a tabloid headline greeted them both at the breakfast table. Billionaire's fake marriage exposed who is Amelia. Her stomach dropped. The article was cruel, filled with speculation and photographs from the gala. Ethan's expression darkened as he scrolled through the screen. This is planted, he said, voice hard. Someone inside the company did this. She swallowed. Will it ruin you? No, he said flatly. It will ruin you. His phone started ringing. Board members, journalists, investors. He stood, already shifting into crisis mode. Stay here, he ordered. Do not talk to anyone. But Amelia could feel the walls closing in. Cameras would find her soon. Neighbors would whisper. Every good thing she had done would be rewritten as manipulation. She retreated to her room, heart pounding, staring at her reflection in the mirror, the gown, the jewelry, the woman the world thought she was. When Ethan returned late that night, she was still awake. You could have told me, she said quietly. Told you what? That this was always going to happen. That I would become a headline. He rubbed a hand across his face, exhaustion evident. I thought I could protect you. You cannot protect someone from a lie, Ethan, she said. The words hung in the air like glass between them. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. It was never a lie to me. She shook her head. Then what is it? His silence answered for him. The next morning, she packed a small bag. The contract had 2 weeks left, but she could not bear to stay another hour. She left the ring on the nightstand beside a handwritten note that said only, Thank you for keeping your word. When Ethan woke to find the note, something inside him cracked. He called her phone again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. Days blurred into each other. Meetings, silence, whiskey, the echo of her laughter in rooms now too large. Then, one night, his assistant brought him a file. Inside were financial transactions, emails, and a single name, Marcus Hale, his competitor, the man who had leaked the story to destroy him. And in one email, Amelia's name appeared, taken out of context, edited to frame her as complicit. Ethan felt the air leave his chest. She had not betrayed him. She had been the weapon used against him. The realization hit hard, swift, and unforgiving. For the first time in years, he left his office without a plan. He needed to find her, not to fix the damage, but to tell her the truth, that she was never just a line on a contract, that somewhere between the signatures and the storms, she had become the one thing he could not control: his heart. Ethan drove through the rain like a man chasing a ghost. The city lights blurred past his windshield, the wipers fighting to keep up with the storm. He had searched every address she had ever mentioned: the small coffee shop near her college, the art supply store she used to work at, even the hospital where her mother was treated. Finally, he found the light he had been hoping for: a small flicker in a second-floor window of a run-down apartment building near the edge of Brooklyn. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding harder than the rain outside. When she opened the door, she looked different, tired, pale, eyes red from crying. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "How did you find me?" she asked quietly. "You left a trace," he said, holding up the locket she had forgotten in the car. "It still smells like jasmine." Her eyes softened for a second before she looked away. "You should not be here, Ethan. It is over." "It is not," he said, his voice steady. "The story was fake. They used your name to frame you. I should have known better. I should have fought for you." She crossed her arms, trembling slightly. "Why tell me now? Because you feel guilty?" "Because I finally understand what I lost," he said. "And I cannot live with that." She looked at him, searching his face for the truth. There was no arrogance now, no boardroom armor, just a man stripped bare by regret. "You think one apology fixes everything?" she whispered. "No," he said. "But maybe it is a start." She turned away, her hands shaking. "Do you know what it felt like to wake up every day wondering if I was just a transaction to you?" "You were never a transaction," he said. "The contract may have started it, but what I feel for you is real." The words hung in the air, fragile, dangerous. Her breath hitched. "I do not know if I can believe you." "Then let me prove it," he said. "Tomorrow morning, there will be a press conference. I am going to clear your name, publicly. You would risk your company for that?" "For you," he said simply. The next morning, the press room at Caldwell Industries was packed. Cameras flashed as Ethan stepped to the podium, his face calm but resolute. "There has been speculation about my marriage," he began. "Much of it cruel, and all of it false. Amelia Bennett did not manipulate me. She saved me. She reminded me what integrity looks like when money blinds everything else." Reporters buzzed. "Are you saying the marriage is real?" one shouted. Ethan looked straight into the cameras. "It started as a contract," he said. "But somewhere along the way, it became something that no paper could define." The clip went viral within hours. Amelia watched it from her apartment, tears slipping down her cheeks. She did not move for a long time, just listened to the echo of his words. By afternoon, a knock came at her door. When she opened it, Ethan stood there, rain-soaked and breathless. "You really did it," she said softly. "You destroyed your reputation for me." "Reputation can be rebuilt," he said. "But losing you again, I could not survive that." He took a step closer, his voice low. "No more contracts, Amelia. No more pretending." Her eyes filled with tears. "And if I say yes?" He smiled, a real smile this time, weary and sincere. "Then I will spend the rest of my life being gentle." The storm outside eased into a soft drizzle as he reached for her hand, pulling her into his arms. For the first time, there were no signatures, no clauses, no deadlines, just 2 hearts finding their way back to the truth. And somewhere between the thunder and the quiet, the woman who once signed her name to survive finally chose to love, freely and without fear. Weeks later, the city had moved on from the scandal, but Ethan and Amelia were learning what it meant to start over. The headlines had faded, replaced by new dramas, but their lives had slowed to something quieter, something fragile. Ethan had stepped down temporarily from his company, naming a trusted partner as acting CEO. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe without chasing numbers. Amelia moved back into the penthouse, not because of luxury, but because he asked her to stay, and because deep down, she wanted to see if love could exist beyond survival. The first morning felt strange. No assistants, no meetings, just the sound of pancakes sizzling and the smell of burnt coffee. She laughed softly as she saw him struggle with the skillet. "You own 6 restaurants and you cannot make breakfast?" she teased. "Delegation is a strength," he said, pretending offense. "Besides, I am learning." "You are burning," she corrected, taking the pan from him. He watched her move through the kitchen, hair loose, wearing his shirt. Something inside him softened. "You look happier," he said. "You look human," she replied. They shared a smile that said more than words could. Later that day, they walked through Central Park, hands brushing occasionally, the kind of touch that spoke of comfort instead of caution. People still glanced at them, some recognizing, some whispering, but neither seemed to care. Amelia picked up a fallen leaf, turning it between her fingers. "It feels different now," she said quietly. "The city?" he asked. "Life," she answered. "I spent so long waiting for the next disaster that I forgot what peace feels like." "Maybe peace is not something we find," Ethan said. "Maybe it is something we choose." She looked at him, the breeze lifting her hair. "You make it sound easy." "It is not," he admitted, "but I am willing to try, every day." That night, they sat on the balcony again, the same place where everything had once felt uncertain. The skyline stretched out before them, 1,000 lights blinking like scattered promises. Amelia leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how strange it is?" she whispered. "How something fake turned into this?" "Maybe it was never fake," he said softly. "Maybe it was fate disguised as a contract." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you would say in an interview." "Then let me say it better," he said, turning to face her. "The day you signed that contract, I thought I was buying control. But you gave me chaos, humility, and something I did not believe in, any more hope." She blinked back tears, her voice barely audible. "You really mean that?" "Every word," he said. "And if I could do it all over again, I would find you sooner." Silence followed, but it was the kind that felt full, not empty. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "You already gave this back once," he said, opening it. Inside was the same ring she had left on the nightstand weeks ago, the metal gleaming softly in the city light. "But this time," he said, his voice steady, "there is no clause, no conditions, no timelines, just love." Her breath trembled. "You are really doing this?" "Yes," he said, "because for once, I am not afraid of something real." She laughed through her tears. "You are supposed to say something romantic." He smiled. "I will be gentle." Her laughter melted into a sob as she nodded, letting him slip the ring onto her finger once more. The city hummed below them, the same city that once broke them now holding their quiet beginning. When he pulled her close, there were no cameras, no contracts, only the steady rhythm of 2 hearts finally finding home in each other. And somewhere in that soft space, between forgiveness and forever, the billionaire and the woman who once pushed him away wrote their own ending this time, in ink made of trust, not obligation. For a while, life felt like it had finally found its rhythm. Ethan and Amelia lived quietly, away from the noise that had once defined them. Their mornings began with burnt coffee and laughter, their nights with shared silence that spoke of peace. But even in calm waters, storms can rise unseen. It began with a phone call, a voice from Ethan's board demanding his return. The company's stock was slipping, competitors circling. "We need you back," they said. Ethan agreed reluctantly, promising Amelia it would only be temporary. "Just a few weeks," he told her. "Then it is back to us." She smiled, believing him, but something in her chest tightened. Weeks turned into long days and late nights. Ethan was pulled back into the world he once ruled, the endless meetings, the flashing lights, the ruthless pace. The penthouse that had been filled with warmth grew cold again. Sometimes, he came home long after midnight, shoulders heavy, eyes distant. Amelia would pretend to be asleep, but she always heard the door, the sigh, the quiet clink of his watch hitting the nightstand. One evening, she confronted him. "You said you would not lose yourself again," she whispered. He looked at her, weary but still proud. "I am trying, Amelia. You know I am doing this for us." "For us?" she said softly. "Or for the man you used to be?" The question hung in the air like smoke. He did not answer. In the days that followed, the distance grew. She poured her energy into volunteering at a community art center, teaching underprivileged kids how to paint, finding purpose in the simplicity of helping. One afternoon, a young reporter came by the studio, eager to interview her. "You are Amelia Caldwell," the woman said with a polite smile. People say your marriage changed a billionaire. Is that true? Amelia hesitated, then said quietly, No one changes anyone. You just hold up a mirror long enough for them to see who they really are. The article went viral again, twisting her words into scandal. Amelia Caldwell doubts her husband's change, the headline screamed. By the time Ethan saw it, damage had been done. His board accused her of sabotaging his image. Tell me this is not true, he demanded when he came home, holding the newspaper. You know it is not, she said. You think I would do that after everything? Then why does it keep happening? He snapped. Every time I get my footing, something drags us back into the headlines. She stared at him, hurt flashing in her eyes. Maybe what is dragging you down is not me. Maybe it is the life you are afraid to let go of. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. He turned away, unable to meet her gaze. That night, she packed a small suitcase, the same one she had used months ago. When Ethan woke, the apartment was quiet, the bed cold beside him. On the kitchen counter lay a note written in her delicate handwriting. You once asked me to stay when it was business. I stayed when it became love. But now you need to fight for something without signing your name to it. Days passed, and Ethan went through the motions of work, but nothing felt real anymore. During a board meeting, his mind drifted back to her laughter, her stubbornness, the way she saw good in people who had long stopped believing in it. He closed his laptop mid-sentence, ignoring the protests around him. For the first time in his life, he walked out of his own meeting. He found himself outside the community center where she had been teaching. Inside, she was surrounded by children, helping them mix colors on canvases. Paint was smudged on her hands, and her smile, real, unguarded, was the same one that had once undone him. He stood at the door for a long moment before she noticed him. Their eyes met. The world fell away. He stepped inside quietly. You left the coffee machine on, he said softly. She laughed despite herself. You remembered. I remember everything, he said, voice rough. And I am done forgetting what matters. The children giggled as he reached for her hand, and in that noisy little room, filled with paint and innocence, the billionaire finally learned what it meant to come home without a title, just as a man who chose love over legacy. The following weeks unfolded like a slow sunrise after a long storm. Ethan began showing up at the community center every morning, still dressed in his suit but with his sleeves rolled up. He helped fix broken easels, carried boxes of paint, and listened when Amelia spoke. At first, the kids whispered, calling him the rich guy, but soon he became Mr. E, the man who bought snacks and tried to paint but ended up with more color on his shirt than the canvas. One afternoon, as the sun filtered through the tall windows, Amelia watched him struggle to draw a straight line. You are terrible at this, she teased gently. That is because I never learned to color outside the lines, he replied with a small smile. The warmth in his voice made her chest tighten. Maybe that is the point, she said softly. Sometimes life gets beautiful only when you stop trying to make it perfect. He looked at her then, and for the first time, the distance between them seemed small enough to cross. The center soon became their shared rhythm, morning chaos, laughter, paint-stained hands. The children adored Amelia's patience and Ethan's clumsy attempts at art. He had never realized how much peace could exist in imperfection. One day, the center director approached them with news. We are losing funding, she said sadly. Unless we raise enough money by next month, we will have to close. Amelia's face fell. Ethan immediately asked, How much do you need? The woman hesitated. Too much. 50,000. Amelia shot him a look, already knowing what he was thinking. Do not, she warned. Do not solve this with a check. Why not? He asked. Because these kids do not need charity, they need community, she said. He nodded slowly, realizing she was right. Then we will build one. Over the next few weeks, they organized a local art auction. The children's paintings were framed and displayed, each one telling a story of color, courage, and dreams. Ethan used his connections to bring in guests, but he let the kids take center stage. On the night of the event, the community hall buzzed with life. Reporters were there, but the tone was different this time. It was not about scandal or wealth, it was about change. Amelia stood at the front, introducing the children, her voice steady, her smile radiant. Ethan watched her with quiet pride, knowing he had never loved her more than in that moment. When it was his turn to speak, he stepped to the microphone, scanning the crowd. "A year ago," he began, "I believed everything in life could be negotiated, signed, or bought. But then I met someone who taught me that the things that matter most are not written in contracts, they are lived." The audience listened in silence. "These paintings," he continued, "are more than art. They are reminders that kindness can rebuild what power once destroyed." When the auction ended, they had raised more than double the amount needed. The children cheered, hugging Amelia and Ethan. Later, as the hall emptied, Amelia stood near the door, looking at the little sign that read, "Open Hands Art Center." Ethan came up behind her, his voice low. "You did this," he said. "No," she replied. "We did this. You just finally learned how to give without expecting anything back." He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "That is because you gave me something I never knew I needed." "What is that?" she asked. "A reason to stay," he said. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "Then stay, Ethan. No contracts, no conditions, just stay." He reached for her hand and nodded. Outside, the city lights flickered, but inside that small hall, surrounded by children's laughter and the scent of paint, two people who had once lived by rules finally found freedom in breaking them. And in that quiet, honest space, love stopped being something to prove, it simply became something to live. A year later, spring returned to New York with its soft wind and restless sunlight. The community center was alive again, filled with the laughter of children, walls painted with colors of hope. A small plaque hung near the entrance now, engraved with simple words. "In gratitude to Ethan and Amelia Caldwell, proof that love builds more than money ever could." That morning, Amelia arrived early, carrying trays of muffins for the kids' art show. Her hair was tied up messily, a smudge of paint on her wrist. She hummed to herself, arranging the chairs, unaware of Ethan standing at the doorway watching her. "You still hum when you are nervous," he said, smiling. She turned, startled, then softened. "You are early." "Old habits," he said. He walked in, hands in his pockets, stopping near one of the children's paintings, a messy swirl of red and gold that the little artist had proudly titled, "Love in Progress." "It is not perfect," Amelia said, joining him. "But it is honest. That makes it perfect," he replied. They walked together, watching the children set up their art. The air smelled of glue, paper, and possibility. A small girl ran up to them, tugging at Amelia's sleeve. "Mrs. Caldwell, can Mr. E help me tie my ribbon?" Ethan knelt with a grin, fumbling with the knot until the child giggled. Amelia watched him, her heart full. Later that afternoon, when the event ended and the crowd began to fade, Ethan led her outside into the courtyard where fairy lights had been strung between the trees. The sun was dipping low, and the sky glowed with soft gold. "What is all this?" she asked, smiling curiously. "A surprise," he said. The kids had been in on it too. They peeked from the windows, whispering and giggling. On a small table sat a framed document. She frowned. "Another contract." "Not quite," he said. "Read it." She picked it up. It was not a contract, it was a charter to establish a foundation under her name, the Amelia Bennett Foundation for Arts and Education. Beneath the official text, a handwritten line read, "Because love is not about ownership, it is about legacy." Her eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, you did not have to—" "I know," he interrupted softly. "That is why I wanted to." He reached for her hand. "You once told me peace is something we choose. I am choosing it with you." She could not speak, so she simply nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. He smiled and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Last time, I asked you to sign a contract. This time, I am asking for something much simpler." Her breath caught as he opened the box. Inside was not the same diamond ring, but a band of white gold engraved with the words, "No clauses, no conditions." The children inside pressed their faces to the glass, whispering loudly, "Say yes." Amelia laughed through her tears. "You planned this with them?" "They insisted," he said, smiling. She looked at him for a long moment, the man who had once lived behind walls of glass now standing open under the sky. "I say yes," she whispered. The cheers from inside burst like fireworks. Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger and whispered, "I will be gentle, always." She smiled and kissed him, the courtyard glowing around them. In that moment, it did not matter where they had started the lies, the contracts, the pain. What mattered was the truth they had built from it. Months later, a magazine ran a story titled, "From Contract to Connection, The Billionaire Who Learned to Love." But neither of them cared about the headlines anymore. Their story was not about wealth or fame, it was about grace. And on quiet evenings, when they closed the center and walked home under the city lights, Ethan would take her hand and say, "We never needed a contract to make it real." And Amelia, smiling against his shoulder, would whisper, "No, just courage." And somewhere between laughter and love, they finally understood the best stories are not written on paper. They are lived, day by day, in the hearts brave enough to begin again.